And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
It not turn calm? Did it just turn into the wild world of professional wrestling and hockey where we have a heel turn and another heel turn and a bunch of just did we just also get a brand new feud in the National Hockey League? A fascinating day to get on and podcast. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as Elliot Friedman cough on the Area 51 Sports Network. It was a heck of a day. We knew Sean. Well, first of all, hello, Sean. How are you? Let's get,
Hi, Kev. I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been quite the few days in terms of hockey news, and it's going to get better because there's still more coaching. There's coaching vacancies that still need to be filled. The Cup finals are about to start, and we got the Memorial Cup going on as well.
Yes, there's lots of hockey still going on. The AHL finals are Calder Cup still. That's going on, even though both the Canucks and the Wranglers are out. There is a lot going on. We've got a very intriguing draft and a lot of that. So there, the next month or so, there's going to be some really interesting stuff going on. But today, let's start with the news that we knew. We knew that Brad Treliving was going to be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was announced by the Leafs yesterday. The press conference was today. But 30 minutes before Brad Treliving is about to get in front of the Toronto media and assemble to the masses, the Pittsburgh Penguins send out this tweet that Kyle Dubas is the president of hockey operations. First of all, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, I got to do this. That was fantastic. And it's in terms of the theater part of this, we can get into the move of this, but it was almost like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're here. We've got Kyle Dubas. We're going to have a press conference now, and we're going to handle, in terms of, we don't have that kind of, I don't want to say cutthroat sort of, everyone plays kind of friendly with everybody. And that was just brilliant little, I'm sorry, we're going to steal some of your attention today, Toronto. You think that you've got the market on the attention. You've been paying attention to Kyle Dubas. Well, this is what Kyle Dubas is going to do. And don't think that Fenway Sports from Boston, who hates Toronto, didn't know what the hell they were doing today. I applaud the move. I think it's brilliant that what they did. Just, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got Kyle Dubas.
I don't think it was from that side. I think it's just, if anything, if I'm going to say there's anything, I think it was on Dubas's side more than Fenway, the Fenway Sports side of anything there. I think it's because if once you have that done, you're going to announce it, right? And I think there was just like due diligence and maybe some delaying on Dubas's side to make it happen. so that it happens on, because if you're when you have that announcement and you're gonna, like, as soon as you can announce it, you're going to announce it. So I think it's more happenstance. But if I am going to put on my tinfoil toque and say anything about it, I think it's the any sort of timing collusion would have been on the on Dubas's side more than anything else.
Collusion in terms of,
or maybe collusion is not the right word, but in terms of just picking the time to do it and saying, okay, now that I know that Treliving's the new GM in Toronto and they're doing this, I'm going to say yes, and then you guys can announce it.
yeah, I
just don't see Fenway Sports is too big of an entity that they're going to be playing around with this the way I think you're sort of saying that they would have. But I do think, based off of how everything was handled with the departure of Dubas, that I could definitely see him going and just sort of timing that perfectly.
That's kind of I think I just to start with the Dubas part of this. Don't you think it's fascinating after we hear all of these reports of what Dubas wanted from Shanahan and Toronto and all of this, whether this is true or not, of course, remains all to be seen. But he's the president of hockey operations in Pittsburgh. He got what he wanted, or what he reported to want. And so I think
even if that's the case, and that, like, he wanted to be president of hockey ops, or he wanted to streamline the reporting, like, what is Shanahan supposed to do in that situation? Is he supposed to say, yeah, go for it, there goes my job?
Yeah, no, I
think it's maybe they were. I think it's smart. I think, other than airing the dirty laundry that Shanahan did, I think cutting ties, if he felt that it wasn't going to work and it was just going to end up them butting heads more than anything else, might be the right move, especially when you have the actual results. Yeah, they've had good regular seasons, but the actual results for the playoffs, which seems to be the only thing that matters for a lot for the top end teams, is not good enough.
Yeah, I wonder if just ultimately it came, what it comes down to is the structure and what Pittsburgh is trying to do in terms of using the word managing up. It's probably easier for Dubas there than it, or feels right there, or makes more sense of what it does in Toronto, where you have a number of different entities. And
even then, though, I think it was because the structure would have been Dubas to Shanahan to there's another person in there that I can't remember his name, and then that person would sort of talk and discuss with, or Shanahan and that person talk and discuss with the Bell Rogers conglomerate and their representatives with the ownership of the Leafs there. So yeah, there was a lot there, but now with him in Pittsburgh, he's the president of hockey ops. He just reports to Fenway Sports.
Yeah, for Treliving, I think I agree with Dan that there's a lot of things that will seem similar for him. So I think it gets, in some ways, it's easy, but I do think that this is a managing up challenge for Brandon. He's already kind of in a little bit I don't want to say he's handcuffed because I don't think Sheldon Keefe is a bad coach, but I think as a general manager, you probably do want to bring in your own coach. So that is an interesting relationship that I think he's got to figure out. I'm sure he'll be fine. I think he will do a good job. I mean, I guess he's off to Arizona now, trying to talk to Austin Matthews, see where he's at, which of course is the big question.
But also, this is just you talk about similar, where he doesn't get to choose his coach.
Yeah,
that's what he just left.
Yeah.
So it's I don't, if we're going to talk about that, I don't think that Keefe is penned in, typed in, bolded in as the head coach of the Leafs for next year. I think it's still up to Brad Treliving to make that decision. He knows that Shanahan's okay, is fine with Keefe staying as head coach, but it's also up to him, because I don't think he'd sign on to be the GM and be handcuffed again and not being able to choose his coach. Either that, or it's a 1 year show me process, and if it doesn't work, then he moves on and gets his own coach, right?
Yeah.
And if not, then guess Brad's going to have another handful on another issue of managing up again, which I think I think it's very well proven here when they went around him to hire Daryl in Calgary, that Brad's if there's a major issue with how Brad had Treliving, in terms of Brad Treliving and his tenure here in Calgary, was that managing up was an issue for him.
Yeah. I think that's it's a huger challenge in Toronto. And you've got, it's a longer conversation, but the Calgary media and the Toronto media is not the same in terms of the relationship. You've got some that will be friendly, but you got some that will push really hard. And I think Brad can handle that. I think there's a lot that Brad will do well, but he's got to navigate. He's got a lot of pinballs and things to navigate here. And, Devin mentioned in the chat, I mean, he's not here, but he did say in the chat, he loved the Treliving press conference. He loved the fact that this is more than this has to be a team.
Yeah, but you need to find someone who loves you like Devin loves Brad Treliving.
That's if I go back on Tinder, Sean, that's my line. But I think he's got some very interesting decisions. And he's not going to be, unless he's wearing a wrestling mask, we won't see him at the draft table. But he's not a busy draft for him. He doesn't have a lot of draft picks or draft capital to get some of the things that he needs. So I do think that there's some challenges. And I think, I'm interested to see what the thing that I'm very intrigued about right off the bat is this Austin Matthews decision. Not only the decision, I think, and Elliot Friedman talked a little bit about it today, and we didn't get into this, but I think it's an interesting question of how much you pay Austin Matthews. Because you can't make him the highest paid player in the National Hockey League, but is it a team-wise decision to make him to do that? That's what I don't know.
Well, I think it depends. We don't know so it depends on how comfortable you are with the cap going up, right? And how much it's going to go up after this upcoming season through the next basically 8 years of that contract. Because if he's signing again, he's signing an 8-term. He's signing a max term deal, right? So Yeah, I think it just depends on where you're at with the cap, and if they think that the cap's going to go up and up and up and up for the foreseeable future, which it probably will, just depends on how much.
Okay.
Then in 3-4 years time, that deal could make he won't be the highest paid player in the league, and it'll be a better deal than it initially looks like, because he is a top end player. Like, he's a top 10 player in this league. So I think it's not necessarily the issue with the issue with the Leafs has never been Austin, other than the fact that they only got Austin Matthews signed they didn't get Austin Matthews signed to a max term deal last time. That's the big one with Matthews, not necessarily his term, his cap hit. It's the fact that they've got John Tavares making $11 million. They've got Mitch Marner making nearly $11 million on the books as well, right? It's the fact that they've got a trio of players making almost $11 million or more.
Yeah.
And it hampers you when you're so top heavy in terms of what you can do. And also part of that design in terms of what Dubas did and all that was with the idea that the cap wouldn't have plateaued because of the pandemic. There's always that what if for Dubas in terms of what if the pandemic didn't happen and the cap was continuing to grow? What could he have done with the extra cap space there? But going forward, you've got Matthews and Nylander's another big. They have to make a decision on him, because I think it more so than Matthews is, what do you pay him, and are you going to sign him to a long-term deal?
Yeah,
because he's 27 right now. His cap hit's just under $7 million. He will be 28 by the time the new deal kicks in. So, yeah, he's a May 1st, 1996 birthday. So, I think that's the bigger question more than Matthews. I think you do what you can. Like, unless Matthews doesn't want to be in Toronto, you're going to get him signed for whatever dollars it makes sense, as long as and it'll be an 8-year deal.
Well, he has to fix the blue line. Like, that is got to be a priority. I don't think he has, like, some will argue this, but I think they are okay in goal. I don't, do they have that Hellebuck vest? Do they have the elite number one goaltender? No. Are they solid? Yes.
I think we're most likely seeing Matt Murray going on the LTIR next year.
Yeah.
And then they're probably going to go in with Joseph Wall and Ilya Samsonov. I think that's fair, as long as you've got the right team in front of them, with structure and the right players. And yeah, the blue line is something that they need to work on. They've got Morgan Riley signed for 8 years at 7.5 now. One more year of TJ Brody at 5. Jake McCabe at $2 million for 2 more years. That's a really good deal for them. He'll be solid for them. Lil Chagrin has taken steps. You've got Connor Timmins, who will be interesting to see if he can take that next step. Giordano's going to be a good depth piece for them going forward. Expecting anything more than that is going to be an issue. I heard that Justin Hall wants to go back to come back to the Leafs, but if I'm Treliving, I don't. It doesn't make sense.
John Cavero's from Hot Take Hockey is he's moving him out. He actually has his suitcases in his pack.
Yeah, you've got Luke Shen and Eric Gustafsson, but I think you need to make moves up higher up in the lineup for the Leafs. They need to find They definitely need to find at least one bona fide top 4 defenseman.
Yeah.
I think if they can do that, then I think a lot of the pieces will fall into place. And if they don't, it's just going to be a repeat of this past season.
Yeah.
Because Muzzin, I don't think he's coming back.
No, unfortunately.
And even if he does, he's 34, coming off a major injury. What are you expecting from him? You're basically his cap hits 5.625. He's essentially just going to be basically, if he comes back, he will be the Leafs version of Milan Lucic. Probably a good, solid depth piece, just overpaid for what he can bring at this point in his career. He was a very good acquisition for the Leafs, but that the injuries have really derailed what that. They need to replace Muzzin is what it really comes down to.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting. And for Pittsburgh, I mean, Dubas said, a lot of people are betting against Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. I would not do that. So very clearly building around what they have. I mean, really, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, the Pittsburgh Penguins could have been that team that represented the East Stanley Cup final. Had they have beaten Chicago, who knows? But they're not there. I don't bet against Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. I don't like to do that. I love Crosby. I think Malkin is one of the most underrated players to ever play this game. But there's some good pieces there. The question with Pittsburgh the big question has got to be that is goaltending. And do you bring back Tristan Jarry? How much do you bring him back? What do you do there? Because that, to me, ultimately has been their Achilles heel. The playoff series against the Rangers, it was their Achilles heel, and it was their Achilles heel really this year. And I think part of the reason
they've got that, they've got to figure out how they've got a lot of cap room, but they've got to figure out how to get some little more. Yeah, just build around those aging players.
Yeah. Legendary players, though.
Legendary.
I still think Crosby has a lot to give. And I still think Malkin has a lot to give. Letang has been through a lot with his body and some, he's had all those injuries he's had in his own health other than injuries as well. So, but Toronto and Pittsburgh, I think that it becomes just an absolute fascinating offseason with Calgary. I think you put Pittsburgh in this fascinating offseason little bubble where, and what this offseason is going to be about is there's not a lot of free agents, right? There's Ryan O'Reilly, and it's Ryan O'Reilly and the gang, as what I would call the free agency, if I could lump it in. I mean, I think people will be searching for Ryan O'Reilly.
And we just lost a big piece in Patrick Kane, having a hip resurfacing surgery or a hip resurfacing procedure, which is the same procedure that Ryan Kessler got, which helped end his career, as well as it's the same procedure that Nicholas Backstrom had, and he's still really battling to become even remotely close to what he was before.
Yeah, so I think, and there's a lot of teams. I just think this might be a year where it's not so much free agency, and it's going to be about the trades. I think
we might actually get a bunch of hockey trades here.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. I've missed the hockey trade, so we'll look at that. Let's save the Stanley Cup final for a little later here. We haven't really dug into the Canucks here, and there's not been a lot of news, but there's been a lot of discussion. The big one about the outstanding performance from Arthur Silovs in the World Championship for Latvia. They get the bronze medal. Calgary Wrangler Christian Rubens gets the winning goal for bronze. I think Latvia is one of the best stories of hockey this year. I think it's just great the way that they, bronze or not, they celebrated it like they won the championship. So I think that's great for Latvia. And I think it's great for Artur Silovs to allow him to take the next step in his career. He played very well. And that's, I think, bodes very well for him. It bodes very well for the Vancouver Canucks. What that does not mean, Sean, is that you should trade Arthur Silovs at his highest value, which is not his highest value at this point. You would get if a GM would trade for Arthur Silovs now, I would scratch my head. It does not mean that you should trade Thatcher Demko at this particular point because Arthur Silovs had a wonderful world championship. Ask the Vegas Golden Knights how they got to the Stanley Cup final. They need goals. Right? So you're not trading Arthur Silovs. You're not trading Spencer Martin. You're not trading Thatcher Demko. You're just letting them develop. This is very similar in a lot of ways to the growth spurt that a lot of people saw when Andrew Mangiapane had that World Cup of a couple of years ago. And everyone thought, here comes Mangiapane. And Mangiapane came, and he's had a bit of a stumble. Silovs will grow, but he will have wouldn't be surprising if he has a bit of a stumble here and there as well. He needs to stay in the organization. He needs to continue to put in the work, and you have a battle for a backup position for Thatcher Demko. And, he played a bit in Abbotsford for the playoffs as well. So he's, you have a battle for the backups. That's what you come up with here. Nothing more, nothing less.
Even then, Silovs is very young, especially for a goaltender.
Yep.
And it's not like he's absolutely ripped up the AHL. He's not Dustin Wolf, coming off back-to-back years of being the best goaltender in the AHL. At this point, the best thing for Silovs' career would be to be getting I want to see the majority of the starts in Abbotsford, and then getting spot starts with the Canucks throughout the year.
Yeah,
and just going that, just not necessarily being. I don't think being the backup to Demko makes a lot of sense for him either. I think he needs to play. So he's 22 years old, and just let him develop some more. Remember, we're also talking about a guy who did in that horrible, weird pandemic season. He in terms of he only got one start in the AHL that year. And it was with the Manitoba Moose. So
Mikey DiPietro couldn't get a start anywhere, and that derailed his career.
Exactly. So then he comes back and plays 10 games last year with the Abbotsford Canucks, as well as 10 games in the ECHL, and with mixed results. And he's finally starting to find his game. So just don't rush it. Goaltenders, for the most part, don't rush them. Unless they absolutely knock your socks off and tell you, no, you need to bring me up and play me in the NHL, you slow play them. Unless you're doing Dustin Wolf stuff, you slow play them.
Well,
even then there'd be arguments about what to do with. There's going to be arguments about what to do with Dustin Wolf going into next season with the Flames.
There already are. Yeah.
So at this point, Like it should like it shouldn't even be a discussion. It should be just like unless he knocks your socks off in camp and like actually pushes, not only for the backup role but for starts. You're playing him in the AHL because he needs games.
Yeah. I mean, look at that 2019 draft in terms of goaltenders. You got Hugo Einfeld, has played one game. Dustin Wolf's been in that draft. He's played one game. You've got, I'm going backwards in terms of the draft, or let's see who else was there. This is the Spencer
2019 draft. Spencer Knight, Peter Kochetkov, Matt Sogard are like the big ones.
Yeah, Knight's played 57 games, and he's, I think people had higher expectations of him than where he is right now. I mean,
and goalies we still haven't reached a point where you're comfortable with goalies year in and year out. And he's also Spencer Knight's also going through a lot, some stuff as well.
Some personal stuff,
some personal stuff as well. So there's not there's more to that story. And Silas was a 6th round pick, right? So it's not like and somehow drafted ahead of Dustin Wolf.
That's a fascinating. That's a good draft, man. That 2019 turns out, especially some late round picks. There's some hits there. Anyway, tangenting, but I agree with you. Like, just let the player develop, and also I think this Vancouver market struggles to celebrate the six. Everyone is happy for Roberto Luongo, but if when it comes to a player that is successful in their own jersey, this becomes a question: do you trade him, or what do you do? Like, we got to get an asset for him, and I just celebrate the guy having a great playoff, having a great world championship, and taking a step, and just leave it there. Just leave it there. It doesn't need to be anything more than that.
It's insane. Like, they're like, well, we want bold moves. That's not the bold move. That is just, we want assets. Well, he is an asset. You want to get younger. You want to have assets. You want to continue building this goaltender pipeline. You can't just. I'm very frustrated sometimes with the narratives that come out, and it's just it's just calm down. Calm down, guys. To quote Tyler, calm down, guys. It's really time to just sit, like, know that this is good for the Canucks. And giving him more time in the AHL is not a bad thing. It's actually a very fucking good thing.
Yeah. No,
because they've got Spencer Knight locked up next year. Whether or not he can bounce back and be a legit bat. What did I say?
You said Knight.
Oh yeah, Spencer Martin. Whether he can bounce back and be a legit backup for Thatcher Demko next year is a big question. I think the Canucks should go out and sign a veteran goaltender to, like, just find someone who's willing to come in at $800,000-900K. But they also brought in Mikita Talapala. Don't know if I got anywhere close to saying that right. He's another he's a Belarusian goaltender. He's 23, big boy, 6'6", 230. Was playing in the Allsvenskan league, so we'll see what happens with him. But just keep Silovs in the AHL, and then if he continues to progress, then give him spot starts as a backup for the Canucks at home.
Yeah. And really, when you look at the Canucks, it's not. I'm going to, I think a lot of people, this bold move thing, I have to disagree with it. This is the year that I think you need to be, you can be a little bit more conservative. Like, I think that there are moves to be made. Like, I think you have some questions and improvements to be made, especially, I think the blue line, you have a lot of questions, but I don't think that this is the year that you need to swing for the fences as much as you need to create competition in the locker room. You need to allow some of these players that played in Abbotsford an opportunity to have a look. You need to find some money. You talked, one of the things that we've talked about with the Flames and, was the lack of foul money, like not playing the Jacob Pelches, not really giving that Matthew Phillips that look, that saves money on your cap if you can get a guy like an Arshdeep Baines to play a few games in your lineup.
Even then, Baines is a year away from
no, I'm using it as an example. But using the players that that are kind of in that fringe, giving him, as Craig Conroy say, the opportunity to wear a jersey. Go get a jersey. There needs to be, the Canucks need to have a competitive training camp.
Well, that, and I think there's, in terms of for the moves the Canucks need to be looking at this offseason, one is to open up some cap space. They've got a lot of money on the wings. I think they'll be able to move some player, at least one of them out this year. Even look at Pittsburgh. I think they could be a trade partner there. You could, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to move Tyler Myers this offseason as well. And if they do that, then I think the biggest question mark for what is on the blue line in terms of what they have right now is what you do with Ethan Bear. If you're gonna take a swing on Ethan Bear and sign him long term, like 3-4 years, not long term, but like medium term. Sign him for 3-4 years at not even bridge, because he's 25. So it's more just like going medium term and getting him locked in at, say, $3 million.
Yeah.
Because his sort of underlying stats show that he is a top 4 defenseman. And if you can get him at $3 million as a top 4 defenseman, that's a steal. There's some found money there. You've got Akito make sure I got the right name. Yeah, Akito Hirose. He looked good for the Canucks coming after being signed out of the NCAA. Maybe you give him a shot, especially in the bottom half of that blue line. I want to see them give shots to these players. You've got Akito Hirose looked solid since being signed. They got Philip Johansson coming over from Sweden. You've got Jack Rathbone, Jet Wu, Christian Rolanen all pushing for spots. Let alone you've got potentially Noah Juleson, depending on what they decide to do with him. And as well as Kyle Burrows and Guillaume Brisebois. If you're going to add to that blue line and find a way to or change something on the blue line, it's got to be higher up, because I think that's where the is needed with the Canucks. As well as this, and then up front, you've got Niels Amon, Vasily Podkolzin, Niels Hoglander, Dakota Joshua, Philip DiGiuseppe, Sheldon Dries, and Jack Studnicka are the sort of the names to watch there, and someone needs to take it and run with it. The only thing there is what do you do with that 3C spot, that third line center spot? Because you've got Pettersson and Miller down the middle in those top 2 lines, and you've got some winger depth, but you need someone down the middle there that can help unlock those wingers there. I don't think you necessarily need a true sort of checking line center there. I think they've got I think you can spread out the sort of that at least to start here. you can spread that out amongst those other three lines. The Niels Amon fourth line, I think with some more seasoning and everything, can be a good solid fourth line. You've got Miller and Pettersson, who I think both have shown that they can be good defensive. You can put them on top lines and they can either blow them away offensively or at least be good. Put the effort in defensively to make it an absolute hell for that other line. So I don't think you necessarily need a true checking line center in that third line center spot, but you need someone who can unlock the likes of Podkolzin, Höglander, Beauvillier, Garland, Besser, whoever's there.
I'm going to throw a name. I want to throw a name at you. He doesn't check all the boxes that a lot of people would want. In terms of age, he doesn't check the box. But damn it, Michael Backlund would be a great 3C. That it would be a fantastic fit in Vancouver.
I just don't see that being, if he was a free agent and was willing to sign like a 1 or 2 year deal. I'd be fine with that, but he needs to be traded. There needs to be assets going out the other way, and I don't see them being a trade partner with the Flames.
No. If you can kind of find, like for me, if you find someone that can kind of hold that over for a little bit, someone suggested. But
they've got Atu Ratu coming along as well, but he's someone I want to see down in Abbotsford for a full season.
Yeah, there's been still a lot of questions about his skating, so
he needs to work on that. But that's why he needs to be down there.
Yeah, but I mean, if you could have a holdover until then, man, I know he doesn't fit all of the criteria what Rutherford and Alvin and a lot of fans want, but damn it, he would look good in a Canucks uniform, and he would be a huge asset. Just, but that is, he's not a unicorn. It wouldn't be it's the wrong word to use, although it's kind of one of the words of the day, I guess, been with Tkachuk. But he's such a solid guy that if heaven forbid a Miller or a Pettersson went down, he can go up and down your lineup. It's like I think he'd be great, but he needs to be obviously he will need to be a free agent, but because I don't think that trade is happening. But man, that would be a guy when he is a free agent. I do think the Canucks need to have a long look at Michael Backlund, and I
mean, depends on where they're at, but yeah,
that would be But yeah, you're finding that three, even a guy like. Finding that 3C to kind of fill that spot. I do agree with that. I guess with the Garland, Beauvillier, Besser, I can see Garland getting some trade value. I like Anthony Beauvillier. I wouldn't say don't trade him. Like if you get something that you like, I think sure have a look at it. I do feel like some people are a little quick to trade Anthony Beauvillier. I think he's a guy that I think can do a lot. I guess the question is
it's there because he's got 1 year left on his deal. I think he's the easiest to trade of those three.
Yeah. But you also have Ilya Mikheyev that should be back. You also have Philip Hronek that should be back from injuries as well. So the depth of the Canucks, in a lot of ways, other than, I think they need to improve the blue line, like improve the quality of the blue line and getting that 3C down. I don't think they're bad.
Well, again, it's finding that right mix, and also getting a 3C, figuring out how you can free up some cap space, so maybe you can get that 3C, and as well as they're in a very similar situation to the Leafs on the blue line, in my opinion, where unless you can get a bona fide top four, I think I don't want to see them getting too fancy with it in terms of like going out and trying to take a swing at someone. Because I don't think there's anyone out there on the blue defensive on the blue line that makes sense for the Canucks, short or long term, especially on the UFA side of things. Because ideally, you'd want it to be a right side guy. I don't think they've got the cap space or anything for John Klingberg, and I don't think that's a good fit either. Damon Severson, maybe, but I don't know if I don't know if unless they were able to move out two of those wingers and open up the cap space long term to make it work, because a lot of these big guys are the top UFA defensemen are gonna want long-term deals, because that's where the Canucks are at too. Is like, it's not only just the fact that they're up against the cap right now, even though they're most likely putting Pearson and Poolman on the LTIR currently, but long term they've got a decent amount of players with long-term deals, and they've got Pettersson to sign. So you got to make sure that there's they've got the cap flexibility, not only this season, but going forwards, to make sure that they can sign Pettersson and continue to grow and hopefully turn into a playoff team and contender going forwards.
What about a Carson Soucy?
Again, is he a top four defenseman, Kevin?
Oh,
the fact that you're wavering says everything. No, he's someone who you're going to be more. If he is, he's going to be a four that's going to play. You're going to pay him as a 3-4, and he's probably going to be at the end of probably going to be playing at the level of a bottom pair defenseman.
Is Ryan Graves a top four defenseman?
Again, I'm not sure he fits what the Canucks need.
Yeah, this is not a great free agent class. It's really, like, I'm looking at some of these names. I mean, Gavrikov, I think, is going to be asked too much. Radko Gudas is going to get completely overpaid this offseason.
Well, good, because he needs all those all the beard products for that glorious mane he has on his face.
Yeah, it's just not. It's not worth it to spend in this. Yeah, you're going to have to be shrewd, or you're going to have to find someone that just steps up.
Well, that's why like all those ones that you mentioned, like, it just, unless you're getting a bona fide top four defenseman, it just doesn't see. I don't see it working. Like, and you already have Hughes and OEL locked up long term at over $7 million on the books, and Hughes is more than well worth it, but OEL isn't anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I look at this UFA draft class, and unless you're signed, yeah, the only ones that make sense to me are if you're getting players who are going to sign for less than it would take to bury them in the AHL as competition for the players you already have in the system that we mentioned before: Kito Hiroshi, Philip Johansson, Jack Rathbone, Christian Wolanin, Guillaume Brisebois, Cole McWard, who they signed in the from NCAA, but I expect him to be more of an AHL guy. You've got Jet Wu, who they just re-signed to a deal where I think it's actually a very smart move. And I actually want to talk a little bit about that. The Canucks are being very smart with their money here, in my opinion. They're signing these players to higher AHL deals so that teams who may want them, but in case they don't make it, then they have to pay him $100,000 to play for their AHL team. Not every franchise is going to be willing to do that. So it really knocks down the potentiality of them losing a player like Jet Wu on waivers. You look at it all and just no one really stands out as someone that makes sense for me for the Canucks right now, where they're at with the cap, where they're at with their development, where they're at with everything they want to do. Unless they're able to move out, say, Garland and Beauvillier, and then you're hoping that players like Höglander and Podkolzin are going to step up and become true top 9 players. It's going to be very tough for the Canucks to feel like they can spend money on the blue line right now. Yep. Even though I think they do need to find a way to upgrade on it if they can. But also, I think if you say you get rid of Tyler Myers or knock him down into a bottom pair role, and you've got a top 4 of Ethan Bear, Quinn Hughes, Philip Roenick, and Owe Ellen, it's not horrible. It's not great. A lot of it comes down to whether or not Ethan Bear can take the next step. A lot of it comes down to whether or not OEL can have a bounce back season.
The problem that OEL is facing is the fact that people are watching him with that contract in mind. I don't think he's a horrendous defenseman. I think he
did not have a good season though. The season before, he was serviceable, more than serviceable. He was very solid. This year, not so much, unfortunately. But I think a lot of that was there was probably too much pressure put on him to be the true number 2 defenseman for the Canucks. And now that they've got Hronek, he doesn't have to be that. And especially if they can find someone who's a little more steady as a defense pair for him than Tyler Myers, I think that'll help out a lot as well.
Yeah. That's true. But it wasn't a great year for OEL, but I also feel like he's been, there's 2 things. There's 2 problems here. One is his contract, but the other thing is a lot of the times when people watch defensive play, they blame the defense a lot quicker than maybe the forward coming back, kind of thing. So I'm not saying he's been great. I think at the very least it would be nice to move him down to the bottom, not top 4, but bottom 2, and improve that way. But
you have to find a way to I think that's why I think competition's huge, but I think they've got that there. And unless you're unless you're able to make a move to acquire a true top 4 defenseman, I say you stay out of it on the blue line, at least unless you're signing players who are going to sign for $800,000 to $1 million.
Where are you with Jack Rathbone?
I think he deserves a shot, whether it's with the Canucks or elsewhere. He could be a trade chip, but I'm not sure how much value that will be. It might be just a bit piece in a bigger deal at this point. If he is used as that, but I think he deserves a shot.
I do too. He had a very unfortunate injury last year that wasn't getting talked a lot. I mean, he was taken off the ice on a stretcher. It could be, I'm not comparing him to Yusuf Valimaki, but it could be a Yusuf Valimaki situation where he just needs a fresh look at somewhere else and he could be fine. Like,
I'm not sure if it's a fresh look. He's almost just playing games too.
Yeah.
he signed after the 2019-2020 season out of Harvard. Played 8 games with the Canucks in that weird season. Then played 8 with the Comets. And then the 21-22 season, he played 9 with the Canucks again. Played 39 games. It was a point per game with Abbotsford. And then this year played 11 games and also only played 37 games with Abbotsford again. Like he just hasn't. And then going back, he just hasn't played games. He needs to play.
Yeah.
So I think he deserves a shot, but if he's not playing, then he needs to be down in the AHL.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last 2 seasons, a lot of it's been injuries for him too.
Yeah, he needs to be healthy. He needs to get healthy. And defensemen, it takes time. It just takes time for defensemen. I mean, 2-3 seasons ago, there were a lot of Oiler fans that were all over Ethan Bear for the way that he played in that playoff series against the Winnipeg Jets during that weird bubble season. And, look at him now. I think he's a legitimate top 4 defenseman. I'm not saying that the Oilers should have kept Ethan Bear. That's not the point. But the point is it takes time for defensemen to develop, and there needs sometimes there needs to be more patience, not only from management even, but from the fans as well. And
and the other thing with defensemen, especially nowadays, is like they're putting up a lot of points in the lower levels, but that doesn't mean that they're ready for the NHL right away. So
it's not only the points.
It's not the point. It's actually in the NHL. It's even outside of the top tier of defensemen who put up points and can play defense and all that. A lot of them do take a lot longer time.
Yep.
And even some of the players the defensemen who have come up and put up a lot of points to begin with have struggled later on once they're no longer doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with the Canucks, I don't think it's going to be an amazingly dramatic offseason that they've had the last few years. But it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think, I'm fascinated. I mean, and we'll talk, this is something just for a future conversation, but this training camp to me is going to be very interesting. It's Rick Tocchet's first one. There has been a couple of years of not good camps and not getting off to a good start. Of course, you'll have the question about the captaincy, whether you put it on someone or not. There's a lot of very interesting things. So I think the Canucks are in a very interesting spot going into next year's training camp. And I think they really, you look back at the end of year. It's so funny how all of the conversation about the Flames, and I just bring this back because, the Flames have been our focus on a podcast, but the drama with the Flames and the feedback and the coach, that was completely direct opposite to what the Canucks were saying about Rick Tocchet and even Bruce Boudreau, and just what they know where they stand. They know the expectations. They love playing with Rick Tocchet. Quinn Hughes had a lot of great things to say. I think the Canucks are in good shape coming into the offseason, into the training camp. But I don't think that they have to. It's interesting. It's going to be very interesting, and probably it needs to be quiet. Not like,
well, I don't think it needs to be quiet, but it needs to be pragmatic.
Wrong word is quiet. It doesn't need to be a dramatic. Every move has to be like this dramatic, bold move. But sometimes the shrewdest moves get you into the Stanley Cup, get you the championship. As much as the Matthew Tkachuk and Jack Eichel deals worked for Vegas and Florida respectively, there were some other shrewd little moves that these teams made as well that got them there. So that's what I just
trading for Jonathan Marchessault and Riley Smith.
a couple of years ago. Yeah, hey, that was a smart move. That's a man.
Underrated storyline there.
Yeah, let's get into that part of it. We have an actual, we have the Stanley Cup final, which is I think it's great, Sean, that we're having an entire month to play the Stanley Cup. I think it's great. We start at June here. We start on Saturday, and then we'll end in August for Game 7. I just think let's just string this out as long as we possibly can. Meanwhile, the NBA, who started later, is going to finish before the NHL. That's, I think, fantastic. Good move, NHL. I'm kidding. Some sarcasm there. But there's a lot of very interesting storylines, not the least of it the one that you talked about there with the Riley Smith, Jonathan Marchessault, the acquisitions of Vegas, getting to where they are. Those former Florida Panthers, that they will have a chip on their shoulder. You've got the Matthew Tkachuk storyline. You've got the Jack Eichel storyline. You've got these both teams brought in new coaches that were maligned in their former organization. You've got a redemption story in Sergei Bobrovsky, who's making $10 million. You've got this career backup Aiden Hill that's leading the charge. And the big thing out of both of this is we are going to have a first-time Stanley Cup winner. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things to watch in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah. Also, by the way, it's one fucking day. One fucking day. But if both series go 7 games, the NBA final will finish on June 18th, and the NHL Stanley Cup finals will end on June 19th.
What's the stretch between games, though? Like, what is it? I think that's was, I think, a lot of where some people were feeling a bit.
You've got 2 days between games 1 and 2, 3 between games 3 and 4. They got three days between when they're traveling for the NHL.
That's what that's kind of where I just feel like if you can shrink that a little bit, that would be nice. That's my thing.
There's 3 days between games games 2 and 3 for the NBA. There is 3 games between games 4 and 5 in the NBA. And they're doing the same thing. They just started a little bit earlier.
I wouldn't mind a 2-3-2 format. I think that's I just feel the length between the games. I just feel it's just a bit too long, and I guess I would feel that same way with the NBA too.
They're doing the exact same thing, except actually they probably have 3 games, but looks like because they played today.
Yeah, that started today.
And then their next game is Sunday. 3 days. So they're actually stretching out longer.
I would like it to be a little shorter, but that's
fair.
Just,
but if you're gonna make those comments about go look at the NBA schedule. It's the same fucking thing, even with an extra 3-day break compared to the NHL. The only thing I would say about the NHL is like they could have started it a little bit earlier, but also starting game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals on a Saturday night, which is hockey's night. Fucking do it. All I hear about all this is just constant bitching and moaning about everything. Oh my God, they've moved the Stanley Cup patch to the other side because of ads on the jerseys. This is horrible. You're just finding things to be complaining about. That's all that is.
I just think the schedule is a little. It's a little too long for me. But that I think if you do a 2-3-2 format, that might solve some of that, but because I would like the hockey to be a bit more like the 3-day part is, you kind of you're losing a little bit of it. It's June, it's summer. You start kind of thinking about other things when you're not a fan of the team. I just wish the games were a bit more condensed some way. That's all.
I mean, that's fair, but it doesn't
NBA.
matter. I feel like it doesn't matter what you do. You're gonna anger some people.
Oh, sure.
Exactly. So like when all I hear on social media, but guess what people do on social media? That's all they do is fucking complain. So if all I see is them complaining, I don't take that very seriously. Like things need to change all the time, especially with sports stuff, because it's really specific. Like I think this might specifically with sports stuff. Like it's just constant complaining about this, that, or the other thing. It seems like.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. That's Twitter's it's Venter, right?
Yeah.
But before we go into the final, I just want to have a quick conversation about Dallas. And what is your opinion on what they do? Do Dallas need to do something with Jamie Benn?
Why?
Well, I mean, you saw the Twitter complaints. Day 2-0 without him, 0-4 with him.
It's much more complicated than that. Much more complicated than that. And people should know that. He's got a no movement clause. He's signed for 2 more years at 9.5. He's going nowhere.
Do you think Dallas is back in this, has a chance to be back in this spot next year?
Yeah, I do. I think you've got Jake Ottinger, who's had some speed bumps in this playoffs, but he's going to grow from that. You've got Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, who are learning on the fly there. You've got Mason Marchment, Wyatt Johnson was nice found money for them. Ty Dellandrea is finding his game. I think they'll bring back Max Domi. He's found a home there. The blue line's solid with Miro Heiskanen anchoring it. You've got Esa Lindell, who's a solid defenseman. You've got Niels Lundqvist and Thomas Harley coming up as younger players. They've got the pieces that I don't see why not. Why you would write them off and say they can't come back. Do they? Who the fuck knows? But could they? Yeah, definitely. They've got 8 forwards signed going into next season. I would say out of the players that are free agents going into this season, this summer, Dellandrea and Domi are the only 2 that I think they'll probably bring back. And then they've got, they've got Logan Stankoven's going to turn pro next year. Could he push for a spot? I'll believe it when I see it with him. I know people are high on him, but he's young. He's a smaller guy. You need to learn how to play in pro and not hurt yourself. But they've got and then they've got just over $7 million in cap space to work with to fill out the roster. I think they could find a way back, their way back. Yeah.
I really like this team. Like, I know that I did pick the Kraken to beat them. They almost did, but I think that this Dallas team, as the years come by, as they go forward here, you're going to have a growing Wyatt Johnson. I mean, whether Logan Stankoven makes the team or not, that's a whole other question. He's maybe down the road, but you got Wyatt Johnson, who already made the team. They kind of remind me a little bit of where the San Jose Sharks were a few years ago with Joe Pavelski. You've got this veteran core that is on the other side. They still can contribute. I still think Jamie Benn can contribute, not the same way that he can he used to, but he still can contribute. You've got the guys like Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson that are up and coming. Joe Pavelski is a Hall of Famer that I just, I don't think he's going to slow. He may slow down, but he won't slow down much.
Is he?
They're in good shape. They're in really
They
good
are.
shape.
Oh, that Pavelski, you talking Pavelski as a Hall of Famer got me thinking, because I'm just like, he doesn't scream it to me, because he's never been the top the guy in the NHL. He's never won. I don't think he's ever won any award, like major individual awards. Like he's just been very good though. I'm not trying to knock him. I don't know.
Let me say this. If his name was Joe Pavelskov from Russia, he's not a Hall of Famer. But I think he's
not a point per game player in his career, but he does have 1,000 points. Let's see here. He's never been a first team All-Star. He's never won any major individual awards. Oh, I don't think he is, Kev.
Oh, well, we have to poll this, because I do think he is. I think he may have trouble getting in. I don't think he's first ballot, but I think he does get in.
I don't think he is. Like, we can have really good players who are not Hall of Famers. I'll say this. I think the Hall of Fame is way too liberal with who they let in my opinion. And if it was up to me, it's not even a question he's not. Just because I hold that in such high standard, and I feel like you have. Can you tell the story of the NHL without Joe Pavelski within the years? That's the big question.
He got the Sharks to the final. He's been instrumental in getting Dallas to where they're at. He's one of those proven. He's a Justin Williams type playoff people. I mean, I guess there'll be a lot of questions if Justin Williams is in the Hall of Fame as well.
He's not.
I don't think Justin Williams. I don't think I would put Justin Williams in the Hall of Fame. I'm with you.
He hasn't had a single point per game season.
Who?
Pavelski. He's gotten close a couple times. 81 and 82 last year with Dallas. 77 this year. 78 and 82 in 2015-16. 140 goal season. Four other 30 goal seasons. Like, he's a good, solid player. But if you're going, like, we're talking about like the ultimate, like individual like accolade for a player. I just don't quite see it.
Okay, we'll put this as a poll question, because it's fascinating. He's 139 playoff points in 182 games. 2-time 30-goal scorer, 1-time 40 goals, 3-time 30-goal scorer.
4-time.
Yeah, that puts, I know that's not he's not 50, but that would be where I would argue. That puts him in for me. Especially if you're and here's the thing, you're right, they're liberal with the Hall of Fame, but that's what puts him in for me, because you put other people in very similar positions into the Hall of Fame. So that's why I put Joe Pavelski in the Hall of Fame.
Why can't we just have the Hall of Fame being small and like just I don't, we're gonna disagree on this, Kev, because I just don't see it. He's not someone that changed the game. He's not someone who you can.
I'll push back a little bit on that. His ability to tip the puck in the net, I think it's not a whirlwind major change the world, but I think a lot of players have learned from it.
Yeah, if he gets in, it'll be one of those ones where like when they've run out of 1980s Oilers to induct.
Oh, is there any more of those left? Or
if he does get in, it'll be like third or fourth ballots. I just don't see it.
But back to the series, I think this is it's going to be a good series. I think we had this argument about the schedule, but the one thing that I'm also excited about, and we are already seeing it with the introduction to the hockey world of Matthew Tkachuk and on NBA, and he's carried it. He's carried himself pretty well, but I think I'm really excited the NHL bigger picture, seeing what Jack Eichel can do.
Would you trade? All right, let's go back. Let's do it, Kev. You're talking about Jack Eichel. Do you wish the Flames had made that trade?
Nope. They wouldn't. The Flames wouldn't have been they would not have. You were not going to give and Peyton Krebs first round pick and an Alex Tuck for Jack Eichel. You would have had to have given up a lot more, and the Flames would not have been where they are with Jack Eichel in the lineup. And would he have wanted to play here? I don't know. I think ultimately
long term.
He signed long term with Vegas.
No, he didn't sign long term with Vegas. He signed long term with Buffalo. That deal was signed in Buffalo.
It wouldn't. The Buffalo Sabres were after some particular things that the Flames didn't have. It
would have been Peltier, a first, and
but the talk was also that Matthew Tkachuk was in that deal.
Look, let's put a kibosh on all these talks of what they were, because I think it's just they probably was like, maybe we'll just do Eichel for Tkachuk or whatever, like something is a little like what the package would, if Tkachuk was involved, the package would not have included like a first and a top end prospect.
Remember though, this wasn't the 100-point player that we known and love with Matthew Tkachuk.
No, but he was still a top end. He was still a top, like a good top end forward at that point.
Sure, yeah.
So, not he was a step above Alex Tuck, at least one step. So, like but yeah, seeing Jack Eichel at this stage is good for the game, yeah. And it's great for all those for him to basically him and Tkachuk basically telling all the detractors about them not being either a playoff performer, Kevin, or a locker room cancer or whatever they were calling Jack Eichel. They're they're shutting up their detractors, and it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, and they've obviously have learned from previous things, and that's great. But outside of the Eichel Kachuk, this is the problem. And it's not a problem. Where I'm kind of, I feel like in terms of matchup, if this was all even, and you just started this fresh off the start of the playoffs. There's one team I would probably be going with more likely than the other, but at the same time, kind of the way that things have developed, it's led me to go down a different path. But there's some really X factors. You already talked about Jonathan. I think Jonathan Marchessault will be an X factor in this series. I think Riley Smith will be an X factor in this series. William Karlsson has been fantastic in these playoffs, and that was a guy, you talk about a redemption story. There was a lot of guys wanting to buy out and send William Karlsson away because he was supposed to be done. He's been fantastic.
He's a great two-way defensive center.
Yeah, outstanding. Also hope that Alexander Barkov this series gets a lot more of the attention. This guy does not get enough attention.
Well, you've got the battle of the 1 season and Jack Eichel versus Barkov. You've got the battle of the number one defenseman's Ekblad versus Pietrangelo. You've got the battle of the offensive defensemen in Montour versus Shea Theodore. You've got two of the biggest hitters in the game in Braden McNabb and Radko Gudas in this series.
You've got dirty rat Sam Bennett, and you got dirty rat Keegan Colasar. Some people call him two rats.
I mean, Marchessault is also a rat, so
yeah, he's absolutely a rat. Yeah,
you got Marchessault, Kachuk, Bennett. Don't forget about Sam Reinhart. You've got Sam Reinhart versus Jack Eichel of the players who survived Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about a shrewd move that Florida made that it didn't go completely under the radar, but it went under the radar a little bit. Anthony Duclair has been a huge, not people are talking about what Anthony Duclair has done in Florida. He's solidified that lineup.
They missed him for the majority of the season, and that he was out recovering from that Achilles injury. They desperately missed him.
I think they were 6 points out. They were 5 or 6 points out before he came back. And he just allowed Matthew Tkachuk to he just allowed that lineup to get settled. That's what he did.
You got Carter Verhaeghe, who was a really good, another shrewd acquisition by Florida. I was actually looking at the way how Florida's sort of put this team together. Barkov, Lindell, Ekblad. The only 3 players that Florida drafted that is on this team right now.
Yeah.
You've got Kachuk trade, Reinhart trade, Sam Bennett trade, Verhaeghe, Duclair, both good signings. Lusterinen trade, Nick Cousins signed, Lomberg, Zach Delpy signed, Colin White, Eric Stahl signed. Josh Mahura, Gustav Forsling, and Casey Fitzgerald, all waiver claims. That Forsling waiver claim is insane. Looks insane because the Canucks traded him to Chicago, and then Chicago traded Forsling to Carolina, and then Carolina waived him 2 seasons ago, and he's been, ever since he got to Florida, he's been dynamite for them.
Yeah, he's one of my X factors. I think he's been fan. I really like him.
He's the reason that that Florida was very willing to give up on and trade Weegar.
Weird, yeah. Yeah, and Vegas, they made a lot of, they did a lot of things, it's a lot also, they made some big moves. I mean, they brought in Pietrangelo, you talk about the Mark Stone trade, you talk about the Jack Eichel trade. But ultimately, to me, I think, the Barbashev trade has to be considered one of the best trades of the year when you're looking at trades of the, everyone, there's a lot of people talking about that Klim Kostin trade as a trade of the year. It ultimately might be the Ivan Barbashev trade from St. Louis to Vegas that might end up winning that, especially who depends on who hosts the Stanley Cup. But really, ultimately, I think you're not giving up on William Karlsson, I think was huge. Keeping Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith around, which is still part of that Vegas identity. That's why I think people still like that Vegas team, is they still have that grit. You moved on from Ryan Reeves. You found Keegan Kolesar, who can do some similar things. Matchup-wise, I guess I'll go first. Matchup-wise, feels to me that Vegas may be the better team. But I got to tell you, I just think Florida is on such a roll.
Well, they've been off and sitting on their laurels for how long now?
It's true. It may hurt them for one game, but I don't know if it hurts them for an entire 7-game series. I just think they know how to win. They got the best player in this series, the guy that's playing the best hockey in the world right now in terms of just finding a way to score at ridiculous times in Matthew Tkachuk. I'm picking Florida.
I'm going to go. I mean, I can just go with what I've said for Vegas since last September. If they get the goaltending.
But that's the problem. Vegas, Florida has gotten the goal. Bobrovsky is probably the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. I mean,
yeah, I like Vegas's depth up front better. One player we haven't even mentioned, and it's a crime that we haven't already, is Chandler Stevenson.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's a for a 5th-round pick.
Talk about a shrewd trade. Yeah, I think Vegas has it this time. I think you with Mark Stone battling through whatever he's battling through, but they've got William Karlsson who can not lock down a line. You've got Chandler Stevenson, you've got Jack Eichel down the middle versus Florida with Barkov, Lundell. Is Reinhart playing up the middle, or did they move him to the wing?
No, he's with Listerinen and Lundell. That third line has been a really good line for Florida.
Yeah. So I just like the depth down the middle for Vegas. Like I said, you got Pietrangelo versus Ekblad, saw off. I like Theodore better than Montour. Anaheim Ducks cast off defenseman.
Yes. Sorry, Dylan.
Well, yeah, they got Bennett up the middle as well. So
talk about another screwed move. That was a good move for Florida. Taking, what did they give up for him? A second.
Oh, it
was a prospect.
It was a prospect who got moved to Montreal in the Toffoli deal. Let's see here. But yeah, but that's the thing, is like all this talk about rebuilding and draft and develop. Look at these two teams. A lot of these teams have been built because of good acquisitions of players via trades and signing.
Yeah.
And waivers in the case of Gustav Forsling specifically. The top teams do it all. And maybe you start with draft and develop, so you build up a bunch of assets, but you have to find ways to acquire players other than that. Yeah, it was Emil Heineman and a second-round pick.
Yeah.
For Sam Bennett and a sixth-round pick.
And, with Vegas, they took their lumps with the Fleury situation. They've taken their lumps with how they handled a lot of their – you could argue, they made a really horrendous trade, the Suzuki for Pacioretty trade. You can't argue that they won that. That's clearly was a Montreal win. But they gave away Pacioretty to Carolina, and he's not, unfortunately, not playing because he's injured. But yeah, it's shrewd. It's shrewd that it and that's
But both teams have had times where they've had to make big, bold, tough moves because of cap reasons and other things.
Yeah. And I don't think it's about just, the other thing that I want to say is I don't think it's just getting in, it's how you get in. And even if you get in at the top, how are you playing when you get in? Are you playing at the top of your level? And it's also, like, let's be honest, with Florida here, it's a little bit of luck. Like, Brad Marchand scores in Game 5. We're not talking about him, but he doesn't. Bobrovsky makes the big save. So, if Alex Pietrangelo is suspended one more game, maybe we're talking about the Oilers here. Who knows, right? Like, it's a fine line.
As a Canucks fan, I know that all too well.
If Carolina scores in Game 1 in that 4 overtime, maybe we're talking about the Hurricanes.
Yep.
So
no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun series.
I think so too. I think it'll be, and new hockey markets. It's going to be exciting, I think. Anything else we need to touch on here?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So we're back next week, I guess, looking at we'll figure out the schedule here, probably midweek again. We will probably have some news in terms of coaching, I would think, within the Flames within the next couple of weeks here. I think it's pretty, well, I don't think it, I have no idea what's going to happen, but we should have some news on that. Who knows what other drama is going to happen here. But I think, also the Memorial Cup, I think, should be very interesting. You've got Peterborough and Kamloops, and then the winner plays Seattle, and the winner plays the Quebec Patrick Roy and the Quebec Remparts. So that will be interesting. So still lots to go on, but we'll leave it here. How do we follow you?
I am Beardy Connect 03 on Twitter.
Tyler is TNOBLE, Christian Schneid's SCHNAIDZ, Devin Gordhow 09. I am KEVOLE, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. We thank you for watching. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you very soon. Bye for now. So I hit